Good morning, you are watching Anewz. I'm Katie Wilson. Here are the top stories. Israel strikes Iran's nuclear and military sites, with Tehran vowing to give a harsh response. The world reacts to the Israeli strike, with the UN condemning military escalation. One of 2 black boxes has been found after the Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad. In a rare direct confrontation, Israel says it has struck dozens of strategic targets inside Iran. The International Atomic Energy Agency later verified a strike on the Natanz facility and says it's monitoring radiation levels with both the Iranian authorities and its inspectors. As the latest development, an IDF spokesperson says Iran launched 100 drones towards Israeli territory, which they are working to intercept.
In Tehran was also hit. Revolutionary Guard commander Hossein Salami was reportedly killed in the strike, marking the most senior Iranian official killed so far. Additionally, 3 top Iranian nuclear scientists, including former Atomic Energy Organization head Fareydun Abbasi, were also said to be among the dead. In a recorded statement, Prime Minister Netanyahu defended the strikes, calling them essential to eliminate what he described as a clear and present danger to Israel's survival.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
The Israeli military confirmed it carried out dozens of coordinated strikes, targeting Iran's uranium enrichment plant at Natanz, ballistic missile factories and Revolutionary Guard sites. Witnesses described blasts rocking the capital Tehran, with air defense systems engaging Israeli missiles over the city. Strikes also damaged residential areas. Iranian outlets say children were among the casualties. The Israeli military says this is the beginning of a prolonged operation, and that strikes will continue for as many days as it takes.
The IDF has prepared for this operation over a long period and is fully capable both in defense and offense. The Chief of Staff is currently commanding the operation and conducting ongoing assessments with commanders both at the front and on the home front. The IDF is ready to continue as needed. The Iranian regime seeks the destruction of the State of Israel. This is an act of necessity in the face of an emerging existential threat.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, condemned the assault, calling it a display of Israel's vile nature, and warned that Israel had prepared a bitter fate for itself. A spokesperson for Iran's armed forces said both Israel and the United States would pay a heavy price. Washington has denied any involvement. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the United States was not consulted and emphasized that their top priority now is to protect American personnel in the region. The International Atomic Energy Agency later verified a strike on the Natanz facility and says it's monitoring radiation levels in contact with both Iranian authorities and its inspectors. Israel, anticipating retaliation, has declared a state of emergency. Flights were grounded at Tehran's main airport, while Tel Aviv-bound flights were diverted elsewhere.
Well, here's how the rest of the world has been reacting to the latest developments.
The world is watching with growing alarm as Israel's strike on Iran sparks fears of a broader regional escalation and renewed calls for restraint from global powers. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted on X, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Let me be clear, Iran should not target US interests or personnel." The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the military escalation by Israel in the Middle East. In a statement through his spokesperson, Guterres said that he was concerned by Israel's actions while talks between Iran and the United States were underway and asked both sides to show restraint. Oman, who is mediating Iran and US nuclear talks, say that they consider this a dangerous, reckless escalation, that it represents a flagrant violation of United Nations Charter, the principles of international law, and that such aggressive and persistent behavior is unacceptable. They add that the Sultanate of Oman holds Israel responsible for this escalation. New Zealand's Prime Minister also reacted to the news.
It's a really unwelcome development in the Middle East. The risk of miscalculation is high. That region does not need any more military action and risk associated with that.
And Australia urged caution during this time.
Australia is alarmed by the escalation between Israel and Iran. But this risks further destabilising a region that is already volatile. We call on all parties to refrain from actions and rhetoric that would further exacerbate tensions.
The Chinese embassy in Iran has issued a safety alert to its nationals in the country, advising them to stay vigilant and to avoid sensitive areas and crowded places.
Tensions across the Middle East have spiked following Israel's largest direct assault on Iranian soil to date. Striking over 100 targets under what it calls Operation Rising Lion, Tel Aviv says the mission was designed to cripple Iran's nuclear threshold. Tehran has responded with missiles, vowing revenge. The regional shockwaves are being felt far beyond. Joining me now to discuss this is Pascal Mass, Middle East analyst. Thank you for being with us. Now, Israel states it struck because Iran was days away from nuclear weapons capability. How credible is that claim, and what does this signal about Israel's threshold for military action?
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, something has to be remaining is that for Israeli people, including the Prime Minister Netanyahu, these actions are in a complete salvation policy in terms of Israeli survival. For Israeli, Iran became the first danger in the area. And as we noticed, the United States haven't been involved in this action. And it means that Netanyahu, whatever occurs, make protection of its territory and its people. And this idea is largely shared among the Israeli population. Well, so now considering the facts, this action has been proudly organized and prepared. As we mentioned, some decision makers in Iran have been clearly killed. That's all. And so the nuclear empowerment of Iran has always been considered as one of the strongest danger for Israeli and for the world area.
Let me just come back to something you mentioned about Washington. So the US has said it's had nothing to do with Israel's actions. Is that really possible in your view after it evacuated its personnel from the region recently?
Yes, it's clear that even if that's a surprise, it's surprising, but I guess that the United States haven't been involved in this action. The Israelis have been preparing this for months and even for years. But when the question is the survival of Israel, the Israel leaders, whoever they were and they are and they will be, have this in mind, that they don't care about how and who makes a comment about this action when the survival of Israel is engaged. And so it's the bad news for the U.S. diplomacy, because at the same time it was discussing in Oman, in Muscat, to make a lower the tensions between Iran and the rest of the world on this nuclear power program. So
thank you very much for your insights there. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Well, that's the reaction we have for now, and we'll bring you more as they come. To India now. One of the 2 black boxes has been recovered from the wreckage of the Air India Dreamliner that crashed in Western India yesterday, killing 241 of the 242 people on board, as well as several on the ground. It's after the London-bound Boeing 787 aircraft struck a residential hostel near the airport minutes after takeoff. A single British passenger survived and is recovering in hospital. The crash marks the first major incident involving the 787 Dreamliner. The search now turns to the second black box as global aviation authorities begin piecing together what went wrong. Well, the death toll stands at 290 after the Air India flight to London crashed into a building shortly after takeoff in Ahmedabad. According to local reports, a single survivor aboard the Boeing 787 was found and is in hospital.
An Air India passenger plane bound for London has crashed shortly after takeoff from Ahmedabad in Western India, slamming into a residential building near the airport. According to city police, at least 290 people have been confirmed dead, and 1 passenger survived the crash. Police say more than 50 injured people are currently being treated in hospitals, and there could be additional survivors among them. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was carrying 242 people, including 11 children and 2 infants. Among the passengers were 169 Indians, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian. The plane went down just minutes after departure, crashing into a doctor's hostel at the BJ Medical College. Part of the aircraft landed on the dining area, and rescue workers say many medical students were caught inside. So far, more than 100 bodies have reportedly been recovered. The aircraft was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, one of the most modern long-haul jets, and this is the first fatal crash involving that model since it entered service in 2011. Authorities say the plane gave a mayday call shortly after takeoff, but then disappeared from radar. Moments later, it crashed into the hostel building. While the Dreamliner has had previous issues with engines and components, it has maintained a strong safety record. However, last year, a whistleblower in the US called for all 787s to be grounded, a claim Boeing rejected. Boeing says it is working with Indian authorities and gathering more information. Following the crash, its shares fell 5% in early trading. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the tragedy heartbreaking and said rescue efforts were being fully supported. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the images were devastating and confirmed that the UK was coordinating with Indian officials.
For the latest surrounding the crash in Ahmedabad, we go to New Delhi and our correspondent Neha Punia.
Emergency operations are continuing at the site of that crash in the city of Ahmedabad in western India, where that plane crashed on Thursday afternoon local time. Civil aviation authorities say that soon after the plane took off, it had issued a mayday signal, but when air traffic control teams tried to contact the aircraft after that, they were unsuccessful. We've seen now videos that have captured seemingly the final moments of that aircraft before it crashed. You can see how the plane really struggled to gain height. It reportedly only climbed about 600 feet before it wavered and then crashed into a densely populated neighborhood just adjacent to the Ahmedabad International Airport. It's here that the plane has hit what appears to be a residential building. Pictures that have been posted online by residents of that area show the tail of the plane sticking out of that building. You can see debris of the plane, including its wings, lying charred on the ground next to it. About 200 doctors in training were reportedly residing in that building. It's unclear how many of them were inside at the time of the crash. Relatives and family members and friends of the passengers who were on board all through Thursday were desperately trying to get more information. Many of them queuing up outside the Ahmedabad airport, hoping that there would be more clarity. Hospitals in that area have been saying that the bodies that have been brought to them were charred beyond recognition. We have heard also from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He governed that region where the crash took place for several decades before he moved to New Delhi to become Prime Minister in 2014. He's expressed sadness and shock, saying that this is a tragedy that is heartbreaking beyond words. It's a sentiment that many Indians are sharing, as this is increasingly looking like it was one of the worst aviation disasters in Indian history. Neha Punya for Anewz, New Delhi.
On Thursday, the United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly backed a resolution demanding an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza. 149 countries voted in favour, with just 12 against, including the United States and Israel. 19 nations abstained. The resolution condemns the use of starvation as a weapon of war and urges Israel to lift its blockade to allow full humanitarian access. While not legally binding, the vote signals strong global pressure. Just days after the US vetoed a similar move at the Security Council. The resolution also demands the release of hostages, protection for medical and UN workers, and accountability for violations of international law.
Against 12.
European foreign ministers said they were ready to step up pressure on Russia, including further sanctions involving the energy and banking sector, to weaken Moscow in its war with Ukraine. Foreign policy chiefs of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the UK and the European Union adopted the statement in Rome, where they were joined by NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and a Ukrainian representative. Following the talks, Rutte said Europe needs to ramp up defence spending.
Because we need to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible position to, one, maintain the ongoing conflict with Russia, the unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine, but also to be in the best possible position when a long-term ceasefire / a peace deal arises, to make sure that Putin will never ever try this again.
The number of Russian troops killed or wounded in Ukraine has topped 1 million, according to military officials in Kyiv. The claim by the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces is in line with Western intelligence estimates. The UK Defence Ministry also said in a statement that Russia has suffered with more than 1 million casualties, including roughly 250,000 killed since it launched the full-scale invasion in February 2022. Earlier this year, the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces claimed that Ukrainian military losses had topped 1 million. A dramatic legal and political standoff is playing out in California after a US appeals court has allowed President Trump to continue his deployment of National Guard troops in Los Angeles. In a late-night ruling, the Court of Appeals paused a lower court decision that blocked Trump's controversial deployment. The National Guard had been dispatched in response to week-long demonstrations outside a federal detention center against Trump's policy on immigration. In other LA news, a federal crackdown on transnational criminal organisations has exposed an Armenian organised crime network tied to COVID loan fraud, violent power struggles, international theft rings and attempted murder.
It started as a pandemic-era fraud. $30 million siphoned from emergency funds meant to keep American workers and businesses afloat. But investigators say the trail didn't end in spreadsheets. It led to a dark underworld of armored vehicles, hired killers, and mafia-style turf wars playing out in Los Angeles. In a sweeping pre-dawn operation, federal agents arrested 13 suspects, 12 of them Armenian-born, across multiple locations in LA. One suspect is still on the run. Seized during the raids, $100,000 in cash, 14 firearms, and 3 armored vehicles. The kind of haul that paints a picture far beyond financial fraud. At the center of it all is William McGrahan. Authorities allege he masterminded a sprawling COVID loan scam, using fake tax records and bogus bank statements to create phantom businesses. He applied for $47 million and secured nearly $30 million. Investigators say part of that money was funneled overseas, with some likely returning to bankroll organized crime in the US. The cash, federal affidavits claim, helped fuel a gang war erupting in California's San Fernando Valley, a bloody feud between two rival Armenian factions, the Artuni Enterprise and the Amirian Crew. What followed was a descent into violence rarely seen on American streets. Drive-by shootings from black SUVs, assassination attempts tracked by drones, even a home invasion murder carried out by a hitman in a clown mask. In one shootout, a gunman was killed after storming a house. The intended target fought back with a revolver. Prosecutors say the conflict is driven by two alleged kingpins, Ara Artuni and Robert Amirian. Both are accused of ordering killings, kidnappings, and torture in a brutal power grab that began after notorious mob boss Armen Kazarian was deported in 2017. The Artuni crew is also linked to a high-stakes cargo theft ring. Their method? Fake trucking firms that rerouted Amazon shipments, netting more than $83 million worth of goods, from electronics to household supplies. But it didn't stop there. Federal officials say both factions ran credit card bust-out schemes, laundered money through a global network, and wired funds across borders. It's a transnational crime machine with suspected links to the Russian mafia. US Attorney Bill Asalee delivered a sharp warning. Let today's enforcement action be a warning to criminals. Our communities are not playgrounds for violence and thuggery. 13 suspects now face a barrage of federal charges. Conspiracy, wire fraud, weapons offences, kidnapping and attempted murder. Prosecutors say the case is far from closed and more arrests are likely.
Azerbaijan's foreign ministry has expressed condolences regarding the Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad. In a statement shared on social media, the ministry extended condolences to the families of the victims and wished them strength and healing. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said Warsaw is lobbying among EU countries to suspend or restrict visa-free travel for Georgia, citing democratic backsliding and migration concerns. The comments were slammed by Tbilisi as blackmail. Our correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili has more.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has issued a stark warning to Georgia. A visa-free travel to the EU could be suspended. Addressing the Polish Sejm, Tusk said that his government is working with another EU member states to gather support for limiting or halting visa-free access for Georgian citizens. The reason? A perceived drift away from the European democratic standards. Yes, that is my goal, he stated, accusing Georgia of no longer aligning with European stance against authoritarian rule. He added, I apologize if this offends anyone, but black and white loyalty to European values matters. The response from Tbilisi was immediate and furious. This is blackmail, said Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze to the reporters. Threats like this are sad and regrettable. Kobakhidze said that Georgian people can't be punished simply because some don't like their democratic choice. He insisted that Georgia remains committed to peace, development and European integration and warned that foreign pressure won't change the country's course. The blackmail has been used for years, he said. It has not worked and it won't work now. The EU has granted Georgian citizens with visa-free access in 2017, a move widely celebrated at this time. For now, this hard-won achievement could hang in the balance as tensions rise between Warsaw, Brussels and Tbilisi over Georgia's democratic future. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, Anewz.
In Kazakhstan, Astana is set to host a regional energy forum along with the Central Asia-China Summit on Monday and Tuesday. According to organisers, more than 20 strategic cooperation agreements are expected to be signed, aimed at creating a base for joint investments in the industrial, scientific and educational sectors. Central Asia is on the brink of a climate crisis, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Newly released reports indicate the region is one of the most at risk on the planet.
3 new reports from the World Meteorological Organization warn of a serious climate threat to Central Asia. Record heat, melting glaciers and worsening droughts are putting the region's water, food and energy security at risk. From 2025 to 2029, every year is expected to be hotter than recent averages, with a strong chance that global temperatures could briefly exceed the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit. Climate extremes like dust storms, landslides, and intense heat are increasing across the region, while infrastructure to capture and store water remains insufficient. A major concern is the rapid melting of the Pamir glaciers, which feed the Amu Darya and Vaksh rivers, vital water sources for millions. In Tajikistan, earlier snowmelt causes spring floods followed by dry summers, putting both water supply and hydropower at risk. The country relies on hydropower for over 90% of its electricity. Experts stress the urgent need for a coordinated regional response, especially for managing the Amu Darya and Sirdarya river basins through shared data and joint planning. The question now is whether Central Asia can unite in time to secure its future.
Kazakhstan plans to turn the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the world's largest operational spaceport, into a major tourist destination. The site, currently leased by Russia until 2050, could soon welcome thousands of visitors annually under a new tourism initiative. Our correspondent Fariza Kalamurzina has more.
The historic Baikonur Cosmodrome, known as the launch pad of the first human into space, is taking on a new mission: tourism. Kazakhstan's national tourism company Kazakh Tourism presented a draft concept to develop the spaceport into a multifaceted tourist hub. The project aims to transform Baikonur into a center for event-based scientific, industrial and educational tourism. A key part of the initiative includes launching regular guided tours even during non-launch periods, aiming to transform the site from a niche destination into a vibrant, year-round attraction. Currently, interest spikes only during rocket launches around 10 times a year, drawing about 2,000 tourists per event, or roughly 20,000 annually. However, Kazakh Tourism estimates that with upgraded infrastructure and new attractions, Baikonur could attract up to 250,000 tourists each year. In addition to tourism routes and international marketing, the plan also involves reimagining the spaceport's museums and promoting the Baikonur brand abroad. Officials also expect the development to spark private investment in the region. So far, low occupancy outside of launch periods has discouraged hotel and service sector growth, but a consistent flow of visitors could change that. While located on Kazakh soil, the city Cosmodrome and surrounding territory have been leased to Russia since 1994 under a long-term agreement running until 2050. Russia pays Kazakhstan approximately $200 million annually for use of this site. Despite the arrangement, Kazakh authorities see a unique opportunity to open Baikonur more broadly to the world. Fariza Kalamurzina, Anewz, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
We're done for now, but don't go far. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful morning.